Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at Chapter 9 of the Ecce textbook and the story and work on our translation. So this is the story in front of you, and again, like I always say in all the videos, the first thing you want to do is make sure you have the vocab memorized. Use any English derivatives you can find to help you with that, just to connect into English a little bit. It might help you just with their definitions. But get the vocab under control and then take a look at the grammar, right? Read through the textbook, read through the grammar notes, and once you have that done, you'll be ready and equipped to translate. Before you translate though, like I always say, read this story out loud. Find someone who you can read it to, or find someone, maybe a classmate, who can read it back to you so you can practice both your speaking and your listening skills. You'd be surprised how much better you get at Latin just by hearing it and processing it through listening and speaking rather than always just reading it off a piece of paper. So bring the story to life a little bit, try to read it, and find someone who can read it to you. So before we dive into the story, there's a couple things we want to make sure that we have under our belt in terms of grammar. And in this chapter, the thing that you were looking at is the ablative case. So you've actually seen the ablative case before, but we haven't necessarily taken some time to get grammar definitions down of what it actually is. But for now, you want to know that there's a bunch of uses of the ablative case. It's a very sort of complex and multifaceted case in Latin. But for this chapter, we're specifically using it with prepositional phrases. So again, hopefully you learned in class, a preposition is something that shows you, your location in relation to something else, relative location. So it's words like near, on, under, any of those prepositions, and a lot of them you've seen before. When you have prepositional phrases in Latin, the noun that they go with is either going to be accusative case or ablative case, which is why we're introducing it in this chapter. The ablative is used when you're showing either position or location, so not motion, but say you're inside something or under something, or motion out of or away from something, right? When you're trying to show those two things, you would use an ablative noun. This is our new noun ending chart. Now that we have the ablative too, you're introduced to what the endings are. So if you look, this is where your macrons become extremely important, the long marks. So if you look in first declension, the singular, you're going to see that nominative singular is an A without a long mark, and ablative singular is an A with a long mark. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to these and that you've got at least it memorized and you can recognize it when you're reading the story. The other thing you want to keep in mind is the ablative plural in first and second declension look exactly the same, right? It's both a long IS. So when you see a word, it's really important, if you're not doing this already, but when you try to really dive into the grammar and translate, it's really important that you know which declension your word belongs to, right? Because you might get confused seeing a long IS and not knowing if it's first or second declension. This will help you out. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that in third declension, ablative singular, you have an E, a short E. That can look the same as second declension vocative, which also uses a short E. So again, I'll just say it again. This is why you need to know what declension your noun is beforehand and get used to them so you can kind of memorize them a little bit. The more comfortable you are with recognizing the declension, the easier it'll be to spot these endings and know what case you're looking at. So once you have that under control, you can dive into the grammar and understand about these prepositional phrases and whether we use ablative or accusative. So this is a chart that I like to use in class. And there's different variants of this online I'm sure you could find, but this is our house diagram. So a general idea to understand what's happening is if you're showing motion towards something, so the left-hand side of this chart, you would use an accusative noun with your prepositional phrase. So for instance, if I want to go toward the house, I'd say ad vilam. And again, if we go back, you'll see the am ending is first declension accusative singular, ad vilam, right, toward the house. The same as if I'm going into the house, right? So if you're not in the house already, but I'm going into it, I would express that with an accusative case noun in Latin in my prepositional phrase. So I'd say in vilam. Now, when we get to the middle of the chart, you're talking about position and location. You can still use the preposition in, which might be a little confusing, right? Because in can mean either into or inside or on, depending on what you're saying. But if you're showing the position or location of something, so in other words, if I wanted to say I'm standing inside the house, in the house, my noun would be ablative. That's where the ablative comes into play. So I'd say in vila with a long A. And again, if we go back to our chart, look at first declension ablative singular, right? Vila is a first declension noun. Vila with a long A would be ablative singular. So if you read in vilam, I'm going into the house. But if you read in vila, I'm already inside of it. And the same would go with prepositions like sub, right, under. And this is why in one of our first chapters, you learn the phrase sub arbore, under the tree. Arbore is a third declension noun, and the E was ablative singular. So now we can continue with the third part of this diagram. On the right-hand side, you'll see it's listed in green, motion away from. and that takes the ablative in Latin. So whenever you're trying to show motion out of or away from something, your noun will be ablative. So in this case, if we're still talking about the house, we would say a villa, right, with a long A, out of the house. Or you might have seen or remember in earlier chapters, we saw the phrase ex arbore, out of the tree. Both of those were ablative because I'm showing motion away from or out of something. So if you can keep this house diagram or this house chart in mind, it'll help you with figuring out, well, do I use an ablative or an accusative case noun when I'm trying to say this in Latin? Or if you're reading Latin, it'll help you understand the translation. Because again, if you see the preposition in, if the noun is accusative, you're saying we're going into something. If the noun is ablative, it means you're probably inside something. So it can mean make a big difference in your translation depending on if it's accusative or ablative. So you definitely want to keep that in mind, and I'll point it out as we go through this chapter 9 story. So now we're ready to take a look at the story. And again, here it is. It's a pretty decently sized story, but we're going to highlight it with the ablative case included now. So again, the red is nominative, the blue is accusative, the green is genitive, and the orange is vocative. That's what we've been using for the past few chapters. Now we're working in ablative, which in this color coding system is pink, right? So as we go through the story, you can see there's a few prepositional phrases that are using ablative nouns, and we'll point them out as we go, but keep in mind why we're using ablative here. It'll help you with your translations. So let's take it a few lines at a time. In the first paragraph, the story starts with Cornelia ubi surgit, e villa sua furtum ambulat, et per agros ad villam amicae curret. So the subject is Cornelia, right? Cornelia, when she gets up, ubi surgit, so when she physically rises out of bed, right? The next verb is ambulat, she walks, and she's walking furtim, stealthily. Now here we have our first ablative prepositional phrase, e villa sua. The long A on villa and sua is telling you it's ablative. It's first declension ablative singular. The preposition a is the same preposition as x. The idea is you use e with a long mark, a, when the word, the noun after it starts with a consonant, like villa, and you would use x when it's followed by a vowel. Right? But they mean the same thing. It means out of. So we're saying Cornelia, when she gets up, she walks stealthily out of her own house, e villa sua, right? Out of her house. And curret, she runs at the end of our sentence, per agros, through the fields. And again, notice how fields is accusative. It's because you're running through. Per gets lumped in with the accusative. It's in that idea of sort of motion towards something. So whenever you see per, it's always going with an accusative noun. So she runs through the fields, and notice it's agros, plural, the fields. And she goes toward, ad, villam amicae, toward the house of her friend. Amicae is genitive. And again, villam here is accusative because I'm going toward the house. Well, in this case, Cornelia is going towards the house. So pay attention to the case in the prepositional phrases. It's helping you visualize what's going on, what type of motion is happening with these prepositional phrases. Then it continues. You have nondum lucet, sed nihil Corneliam terret. So nondum lucet, it's not yet light, but said, nothing frightens Cornelia, right? You'll notice Corneliam is the direct object. It's accusative. So I'm not saying Cornelia is doing anything, right? Terret means he, she, or it frightens. Nihil is the subject here, and nihil doesn't belong to any declension. You just translate it on its own as nothing. So it's acting as the subject here. You're saying nothing frightens or scares, terret, Cornelia, right? And that's why she's the direct object. It continues, nemo eam conspicit. So nobody, nemo, right? Again, that's acting as the subject. Nobody catches sight of her, eam. Eam is our accusative direct object. Then we continue, nulli servi in agris laborant. Nulli servi is my subject, no slaves, are working, laborant, right? Notice the NT because they are working. Then you have a prepositional phrase, in agris. This is ablative. And if you think about it, the reason why is pretty straightforward. We're not saying that anyone's going into the fields, which would be accusative. We're saying that they're in the fields. It's showing position, right? No slaves are working in or inside the fields, right? So there's no motion involved. They would already be out in the fields. It's just showing the position or location. So that's why we're expressing it with an ablative noun. Then it continues, etiam janitor ad januam villae dormit. So it's saying even etiam, even the doorkeeper, the janitor, even the doorkeeper is sleeping, dormant, Ad Januam vili. There's another prepositional phrase, and this one is accusative with Januam. At, ad, right? The door of the house. Vili is genitive. It's accusative, Januam, because the preposition is ad. Ad always goes with an accusative noun. So you're saying even the doorkeeper is sleeping at the door of the house. So the idea so far is that Cornelia is out so early that everyone's asleep. No slaves are working. The doorkeeper is asleep. No one's up because it's not yet light, right? Then we continue. You have Cornelia, quod tacite intrat, janitorem non excitat. So Cornelia is your subject. Cornelia, and then we have a side thought here, a clause, because she enters tacite, silently or quietly, right? Because she enters quietly, she doesn't wake up, non excitat, right? Cornelia is still the subject. She doesn't wake up the doorkeeper, janitorem. It's just an accusative direct object. So she has to sneak into the house, she enters quietly, and she doesn't wake anyone up. Then we go to the next paragraph. We have Cornelia cubiculum Flaviae tacite intrat et eam excitare temptat. So Cornelia is my subject. What does she do? She intrat tacite. She silently enters. And then we have a direct object. Like, what does she silently enter? The cubiculum Flaviae, the bedroom of Flavia. So she goes into Flavia's bedroom. And excitare temptat. She tries, temptat, excitare, to wake up, right? There's your complementary infinitive. She tries to wake up. Eam, her. The her is referring to Flavia, right? So she goes into Flavia's bedroom and she tries to wake her up. Then you have adhuc dormet Flavia. So Flavia, subject, is still sleeping. Adhuc, right? She's still asleep. Even though Cornelia tried to wake her up, she's still sleeping. It continues with iterum temptat Cornelia. So Cornelia temptat, she tries, iterum, again, right? She tries again to wake her up. Then you have Flavia semisomna. Quis est? Cur me vexas. Right? So Flavia is described as semisomna, half asleep, right? So she wakes up, but she's half asleep basically. And she says, quis est, who are you? And you'll notice that s is the verb to be, but it ends in an s, right? That means you are. Quis just means who. So literally it says who you are, or as a question, who are you, right? Who are you? She doesn't recognize Cornelia. Then it says, cur me vexas. Why, cur, are you annoying? Vexas, me, right? Why are you annoying me? And again, notice that s and vexas both end in an s because Flavia is talking to someone. When you're talking to someone, you're going to be using second person, right, to address them. You. You're either saying you or you all. Here, there's only one Cornelia, so Flavia says you, singular. Who are you and why are you annoying me? Then we continue. You have Cornelia respondet. Sum Cornelia, Sergei, right? So Cornelia responds. Cornelia responded. Sum Cornelia, I am Cornelia, right? So she says, who are you? I'm Cornelia. Then she gives an imperative command, Sergei. Sergei is the imperative singular, right, of sergere, to get up. So remember, to form the imperative singular, you just drop the re off the infinitive. This is what we call a positive imperative. You're telling someone to do something, right? So Sergei means get up. Flavia serget, right? Flavia gets up. Laeta Corneliam excipit et clamat quid tu hic, right? So Laeta is referring back to Flavia. It means she's happy. You can almost translate this as an adverb, happily, right? Excipit means she welcomes. It's still referring back to Flavia because Cornelium is a direct object. So Cornelia is not doing anything here. So it says happily, she welcomes Cornelia, and clamat, she shouts, meaning Flavia shouts, quid tu hic, what are you doing here, right? Quid tu hic, why are you here? What are you doing here? She says. In that last sentence, the book is implying the verb doing, right? So you just have to imagine that that's there. But it's saying, what are you doing? Quid tu hic. Then you have Cornelia, take Flavia, noli servos excitare, right? So Cornelia says, take Flavia. Again, take is an imperative. It's a command, a positive one. She's telling Cornelia to be quiet. Take means, be quiet. Flavia is just the vocative. That's who she's talking to. So she says, be quiet, Flavia. Then you have noli servos excitare. So noli excitare is also an imperative, but in this case, it's what we call a negative imperative because she's telling her to not do something. So when you have noli plus the infinitive excitare, it means you're telling one person to not do something. In this case, she's saying don't wake up, noli excitare. Servos is your direct object, right? Who does she not want Flavia to wake up? The slaves. So it says, be quiet, Flavia, don't wake up the slaves. Then you have veni tacite venite mecum in agros. So again, veni is another imperative. It comes from venire, which means to come. So this one, she's saying, come quietly with me, mecum, right? It's another positive imperative. So she says, come quietly or silently with me in agros. Now here we have in agros accusative. In the last section, we saw in agris, ablative, right? The slaves were working in the fields. Here it's accusative. So it doesn't mean come with me in the fields. It means come with me into the fields. The idea is that they're not in the fields right now, so they'd have to go into them to get there, right? So that's what's being expressed with the accusative now. It's saying, come with me quietly into the fields. Then you have ibi nemo nos audire potest. So there, ibi, nemo, nobody, that's the subject in this sentence. Nobody is able, potest, right? Notice the T on the end of it, he, she, or it is able. Audire, to hear, right? No one is able to hear nos, us. Now, if you got confused and you thought nos was the subject, which, nos as a direct object and a subject is spelled the same way, you have to look at the verb. So if nos was my subject, we, then I wouldn't have potest there. I'd have to have possumus with an mus ending, right? We are able. So you can kind of tell by the context that we is not the subject. It's going to be the direct object. So nemo is my subject here. Then we continue. You have Cornelia Flaviam furtum e villa in agros ducet. So Cornelia, subject, she stealthily, ducet, leads, right? Who does she lead? Flaviam. She leads Flavia, a villa, out of the house. Notice how it's ablative because it's motion out of, in agros, into the fields. So she leads her out of the house and into the fields. And again, it's playing around with prepositions to let you see an ablative, villa, and an accusative, in agros. Then you have ubi puellae ad arbores adveniunt. Cornelia, misera sum inquit, quod ego et Marcus et Sextus et pater et mater Romam hodie redire paramos, right? A long sentence. So you have ubi, when, the girls, puellae, there's my subject. So when the girls adveniunt, they reach or arrive, you could say. When they arrive ad arbores, at the trees. And again, ad goes with an accusative noun. That's why you have arbores, right? It's accusative plural, third declension. So when the girls arrive at the trees or reach the trees, Cornelia says, and again, Cornelia should be red here because she's the one talking, not orange. That's a typo. But she says, misera sum, I am miserable, right? Miserable. And misera is nominative because when you have the verb to be, the words going with it are going to be nominative. So you can imagine ego, sum, misera, ego and misera would both be nominative. I'm miserable, she says, because ego, I, me and Marcus and Sextus and father and mother, right? There's a lot of conjunctions here connecting all these. Basically, all of us is what she's saying, my entire family. All of us, paramus, we are preparing. Now, why is it a paramus? Because of ego, right? I plus a bunch of other people is we, right? So she's counting herself in this group. So she says, we are preparing, paramus, redire, to return, right? Where are they returning to? Romam, to Rome, right? That's the idea. We're returning to Rome, hodie, today. So we're getting ready to return to Rome. And she says, princeps patrem meam consulere vult. So the emperor, princeps, wants to consult consulere vult. It's a complementary infinitive. He wants to consult patrem meum, my father. There's your direct object. Then she says, nobis igitur necesse est statum discedere, right? So therefore, igitur, it is necessary, necesse est, nobis, for us. It's necessary for us, discedere, to depart statum, immediately. Right? So she's telling her, I'm sad, I'm miserable, misera, because it's time to go. Remember in the previous chapters, the father, Gaius, got called back to Rome. That's why she... So now we continue. And you have Flavia clama, cur statum, Cornelia. So Flavia shouts, why immediately, Cornelia? Right? Cur statum, cur means why, and statum is immediately. Cornelia is vocative just because Flavia is calling her by name. So you remember in the last section, Cornelia said it's time to leave, for us to leave immediately. Flavia says, why immediately? Why do you have to leave right now? Then she says, cur non pater tuus discedit solus. So, cur non, why doesn't pater tuus, your father, discedit, leave, solus, alone? Right? Why doesn't your father go by himself? Right? And then she asks, cur vos omnes simul disceditus. Why do you all, or why are you all, leaving disceditus, simul, together? It's the same question that Marcus asked in the last chapter. He said the same thing or something similar when he says, the emperor is calling back dad, not me. Why do I need to go? Right? Flavia has a similar question. She's saying, why doesn't your father go by himself? Why do you all need to leave? Then you have respondet Cornelia. So Cornelia responds. Nescio Flavia, sed nobis secunda ora discedere necesse est. So nescio, I don't know. It's the verb nescire, which means to not know. And you'll notice that it ends in an O, meaning I, right? So I don't know, Flavia. And again, Flavia is vocative because she's calling her by name. So she says, I don't know, Flavia, but necesse est, it's necessary, right? Nobis, for us, discedere, to leave or to depart, secunda ora, at the second hour. And again, with timing, if you haven't read this, you should look it up. I think the book references it. In ancient Rome, right, in Roman culture, the second hour is not 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. It's the second hour after sunrise is kind of the idea. So you're probably talking somewhere around 8 a.m., give or take. If you're assuming the sun rises around 6, it's whenever the second hour after the sunrise is, that's when they're going to leave. So pretty early in the morning. And you might have noticed too that secunda ora ends in a long A. It is ablative. We're going to gloss over it for now, but you're going to see in later chapters another use of the ablative is when you're telling time, right? And in this case, that's why you have secunda ora at the second hour. Think of it as more of a vocab word for right now, so you don't get bogged down, but we will talk more about that as you go through Ecce Romani, right? They'll bring up how you tell time, and you'll understand why this is ablative, right? But Flavia is basically saying, why do you have to leave? Why don't you stay? Why doesn't God go by himself? Cornelia doesn't know. All she knows is that they need to leave early in the morning. Then you have Flavia lacriman, right? So Flavia cries. O me misera, right? Poor me, right? Oh, poor me. Oh, miserable me. Vos omnes Romam reditus. She says, you all, vos omnes, all of you, are returning, reditus, right? Romam, to Rome. Mihi necesse est hic manere. She says, it's necessary, necesse est, for me, mihi, hic manere, to remain here, right? Hic is here, and manere is to remain. She says, vale Cornelia, right? Goodbye, Cornelia. Multas epistulas ad me mite. So all of these are accusative, multas, epistulas, and ad me. Ad me is accusative because she's saying to me, right? So again, prepositional phrase with ad is accusative, towards me or to me. The verb here is mite. Now, mite, you might recognize, is mitere, the verb to send, without the re. It's another positive imperative. So she's saying, send to me, ad me mite, right? Send to me. And now we need a direct object, right? What are you going to send? Multas epistulas, many letters. So she's saying, send to me many letters. Then she asks, prometisne. So the any, again, just means you're asking a yes or no question. So pretend it's not there. The verb is prometis, which means do you promise, right? She's asking a question. The S ending means you are doing something, right? And since she's talking to Cornelia, that makes sense. She says, send me many letters. Do you promise? Cornelia responds, right, by saying, ego promito, I promise, right? Ego promito, I promise. Et iam vale, and now, right? Et and iam now. Vale is goodbye, right? Same idea. And vale, by the way, is also a positive imperative. We translate it as goodbye, but you're really kind of ordering someone to be in good health, basically, right? But you can think of it as goodbye. She says, and now, goodbye. Cornelia flaviam complexu tenet et lacrimans abi. So Cornelia, our subject, holds Flavia, tenet Flaviam, holds her. Complexu means in an embrace. That's something we haven't seen. That's a fourth declension noun. You'll learn that later on, but think of it as just a vocab term. Holds her in an embrace, And abit, she goes away, lacrimans, crying. Right? So there's our story. The idea here is to pick up on the prepositional phrases. That's the new bit of grammar you want to really make sure you have under control. Ablative versus accusative. You want to think of that house diagram. If you're going towards or into something accusative, basically everything else is ablative. So if you have that under control, you should be fine. Good luck. And if you have any questions, just put them in the comments and I'll help you out however I can.